Good morning, Julie. Can you hear me all right? I think you need to unmute so I can hear you.
Yep, there we go. Can you hear me?
How are you?
I'm well, thank you. How about yourself?
I'm digging out of lots of snow. So
Wow, where are you at?
I'm in Fort Collins, Colorado. We got probably about 8 inches last night and still snowing this morning.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I'm on the eastern plains of Colorado, and it's just really foggy and a little bit snowy here. So
well, it's coming your way.
Yeah, I was gonna say, you're sending it my way, probably.
You're going to be one of our presenters, right?
Yes.
Okay. And my understanding is this is kind of a lightning round. We're going to have actually 3 people presenting today. Is that your understanding as well?
Sure, I can do it that way. I had prepared for the full 50 minutes, but I can do it either way, whatever works.
Well, let's let Brandon chime in. Brandon, are you with us?
I am, yeah. So this one is going to be 15-minute lightning rounds. Julie, you'll be going first.
Okay.
And then we have Lauren, and then we have Nina, Ellis, Frischmann going last. So
sure.
So you'll just have to talk really fast, Julie.
Oh boy. Yes, be selective about my content for sure.
Yeah, and Brandon and I can help facilitate any questions that come up. Probably for this presentation, it's probably better to wait till the end for people to ask questions, if that's okay with you.
Absolutely, sure.
Brandon, you all right with that?
yeah, I think that'll work. Greg, doesn't look like I can make folks co-hosts, so you'll probably have to do that with Julie, Nina, and Lauren.
I just made Julie co-host. I don't see Lauren or Nina in yet.
Yep, they're not in quite yet.
Okay. So Julie, this, if you have slides to show.
I do.
Excuse me, this will let you do that.
Okay. And that's just the screen share, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. At all 3 of my schools, we're using WebEx, and I've used Zoom for some of my other conferences, but I'm gonna have to dust the cobwebs off a little bit.
Well, that's one thing I've recognized is I never know which video tool we're going to use when I come to a meeting anymore.
Exactly. Yeah. And there are so many choices. It seems like they've sort of come flying out of the woodwork now, and it's real interesting to see the capabilities of each of them.
Yes.
And then be able to make a more educated judgment on which one I really like. So.
And you said you're out on the plains of Colorado. Where are you located?
I'm out in Kiowa.
Kiowa. Okay.
Yeah.
We have a good friend. We have a good friend whose daughter taught over in Ray for a couple years.
Yeah. Yeah.
She's now in Castle Rock now.
Okay. Yeah. Castle Rock is really sprung up. We moved out this way. I'm a Colorado native, so that's kind of fun to see how things have changed. But yeah, when we first moved out here, Castle Rock was just, horses and cows out on the plains, and now there's just so much growth. It's incredible. So
you teach out in Kiowa, or?
Nope. Nope. I'm teaching at Community College of Denver and Community College of Aurora, and then I'm also doing the Colorado Early College in Parker.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And I'm at CSU. I'm an instructional designer at CSU.
Ah, okay. So you're close to home for yours, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think we just had Nina join us. There she is.
Yeah, Julie, if it makes you feel any better, I'm in downtown Colorado Springs, and I think it's just nasty here too. There's not any snow or anything. We just get the bad, gross weather to go with it. Yeah.
You can't see anything.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it looks like it may be coming our way.
Hi, Nina.
Hi, Brandon. Hi, Nina.
This is Greg. Brandon's on the line too. So I'll ask you the same question I just asked Julie. Are you aware this is kind of a lightning round and we're actually going to have 3 presenters, kind of 15 minutes each? Is that your understanding as well?
Yes, after I saw that when the schedule came out.
Okay. So no surprise then.
No.
Good. And Brandon, what was the order we were going to do again? Julie was going to go first. Is that right?
Yeah, it's Julie, and then we'll have Lauren, and then Nina. You get to wrap us out.
Yay.
And what Greg said earlier is we will likely try and take questions at the end for folks, just so that we can, respect all the presenters' time, make sure everybody gets their allotted time.
And Brandon, I don't know how you've been doing this. I just let our speakers introduce themselves, if that's okay with Julie and Nina.
Sure. Yep, that works.
And if anyone's kind of going over that 15-minute mark there, I'll throw something in the chat and say really nicely, it's time to time to wrap up.
Okay.
Perfect. Thank you.
Lots of stuff here I'm throwing at you, but we kind of have a hard deadline at 9:50. So just because the way Zoom is working and getting set up for the next presentation, so we'll shut her down at 9:50.
Okay.
Thank you.
Hey, Brandon.
Yes, sir.
Yesterday, I don't know if you experienced this, but when I tried to mute everybody, that also muted the speaker, which was not a good thing. Do you know from where you're at in terms of your hosting, are you able to mute everybody?
Nope. And that's correct. It will mute. It will mute everyone. So regardless of their status as a presenter or not.
Okay.
So if somebody needs to be muted, you can run through the participant list and see who's unmuted. And as long as they're not presenting, you can mute them there.
Okay.
Looks like Lauren joined us. Could you make her a co-host, please?
Lauren. Let me find her. Lauren Grimes.
Yep.
I will make her a co-host. Good morning, Lauren.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning,
How are you?
Lauren.
Hi, Lauren.
I'm good. I'm good.
Lauren, I'll ask you the same question I asked the other 2 presenters. So you're aware that this is kind of a lightning round and each speaker has roughly about 15 minutes?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. So Julie's going to go first, followed by you, Lauren, and then Nina's going to wrap it up here at the end.
Okay, great.
And we'll save questions till the end, if that's okay with you.
Sounds good.
And we got about a little over 5 minutes to go. So I'm going to put myself on mute for a moment, but I'll be back.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I'll tell you a little story. You know, we're all kind of cooped up. I'm kind of a golfing person, and I'm really struggling with not being able to go golfing. So I purchased this golf net. We got it yesterday. We set it up. I actually took a few swings, and lo and behold, this heavy snow came last night and has destroyed my beautiful golf net. So
At least you got to try it once.
I got to try it once. I like your optimism.
You gotta try and find an indoor one next time.
Right.
Well, I gotta pay closer attention to the weather report too, I guess.
Dave and Buster's, I think you can hit indoors there. Except you
Excellent.
probably can't go there now. They're probably closed too.
Well, I brushed all the snow off this morning, so it might be salvageable, but we'll see. Julie, do you prefer to go by Dr. Stewart, or should I introduce you as Julie, or what do you prefer?
Dr. Julie is fine.
Dr. Julie, okay. It's kind of funny. I probably have 16 tabs open right now, and probably half of them are some sort of communication tool.
Hey. Mm-hmm.
I'm
Yep.
not really sure who am I talking to and what tool am I using right now.
And your computer's going, oh my gosh.
Yeah, not happy.
That's been a challenge for a lot of my students is they have older computers. And so trying to run multiple software packages at the same time and, you know, the internet and all of that, some of them are, it's a struggle for real.
I've seen that with a lot of faculty I've helped as well. And I think next year I'll probably do a presentation on why the narrated PowerPoint should die. Because 700 megabyte PowerPoint should not be a thing.
Right. Amen. I agree.
Brandon, can you come to CSU and present that to our faculty? That would be wonderful.
You know, and there's some folks who, you know, they're trying, but it's really hard to explain screencasting to somebody who PowerPoint is their thing and they've spent the last, you know, 10 years learning it, and that's the tool they want to work with, and adding those extra variables in just becomes a little too much for them. So
Yeah.
So we have
Well, and I
about
think the speed with which we had to do the conversion sort of freaked people out too.
oh yeah,
It would be interesting to me to do a conversion, to kind of watch it unfold if there wasn't the time crunch. You know, what would have happened if we had a semester or two to really evolve and learn and give ourselves time to learn these software packages and then make the transition. I think we all, I think that would have been beneficial for everybody.
Oh,
yeah.
I agree.
Yeah.
It was rough trying to do it because at first we thought we were going to have the week of spring break and the week before spring break. And then Sunday we found out that we were going remote on Monday.
Yep.
As faculty. So that was very challenging, especially I was working with a faculty member who doesn't use email. So trying to get this person on remote and help them go remote was a challenge.
Yeah.
Like I would have been great if they could use PowerPoint.
The starting point, right?
All right, Dr. Julie, we're at 9 o'clock, so I want to make sure you get your time. Dr. Julie, take it away. You're up.
Thank you. Thank you. Good morning to everyone. I'm glad we're all here in the classroom, if you will, our virtual classroom. So first of all, I'd like to welcome you. I'd like to share with you some information and a passion that I have for student retention and the connection that that has to open education resources. So just a brief bit about me. My name is Dr. Julie Stewart. I am part of the Colorado Community College system, affiliated with 3 different institutions there. And so it's always interesting to me how the different institutions, though linked, are very different in the way that they act and feel. So that's been great for me to kind of get some experience with that. I also have my own business and do business consulting. So teaching is really my passion, and it's been great to sort of incorporate both of those things. So thank you all for coming. I appreciate your time. I know it's valuable, and we all have lots of other responsibilities that we're trying to take care of. So with that, I will begin. I'm going to go ahead and screen share. If I could please ask you to let me know if you can see the screen once I get it pulled up, that would be great. Can everyone see that? No?
Nope, we're not seeing it.
No. Okay, hang on a minute here. Let me. Okay. Well, Okay, technology troubles. Hang on a minute here.
There we go. That looks like
Okay,
it's getting there.
sorry about that.
There we go.
Just needed a moment there. Okay, so student retention through open education resources. I want to start sort of at the beginning with open education resources as a format for really getting students involved and active and engaged in the classroom. And so that's why it's one of my passions. Is I've really found ways to sort of use OER to grab students and have them produce content for the course as well, so that they can be empowered to create resources and to create activities. This is an interesting graphic that I've used, and Dr. Mark Perry, I spoke with him just earlier this week, and this is a revised version of it since December. And so if we look, the overall inflation rate is 59.6%. And the 2 most expensive things that folks are dealing with right now are hospital services and college tuition and fees. And so cars and toys and computers are significantly less than what we're asking our students to pay for in terms of coming to college and being successful and being able to stick with it. So I thought this was a really interesting graphic to kind of open with and sort of set some context for how are we challenging our students, and what are some ways that we as faculty and administrators can reduce some of those barriers to retention. So with that, what is OER? Has anyone used OER in their classrooms before? Okay, I'm going to assume that that's a yes. I can't hear anyone. So it's openly available resources. No copyrights or permissions are needed. It's freely accessible. So it's textbooks and activities and information that we as instructors can go and pull and use in our classrooms without having students have to pay for textbooks and all of those materials that are typically associated with a college classroom. So they're used for learning, assessing, and all of those different kinds of things. So why use OER? Well, significant cost reduction to our students. Vincent Tinto in 1975 talked about successful integration of students. And there are three components to that. One of those being individual components, and then institutional components, and then social and external level components. And so some of those external level components deal with the financial ability of students to pay for those textbooks. And based on that graphic that I first showed, they really are expensive. That's a huge cost to our students. And so there's been research that suggested students don't register for specific courses because of the cost of the textbook. And so they're putting off some of those courses and not being able to complete the programs because of those cost issues. One of the great reasons that I use OER, I teach in the business department. And so the currency of information, and as dramatically and dynamic as the business environment is, it's really important that I be able to use current information. And so OER is something that's pretty continually updated and can be used by students when they're searching for content, that we can talk about issues that are happening right now. And so it's great that students are living in that business world and have that information that they can pull from to bring in at no cost and use in our classrooms. One of the other reasons that I feel like OER is really important, and a way that I use it, is I encourage my students to go and search for content. Bring that content to class with you, because that gives me a way to kind of gauge what are they interested in. It gives me some information on where is the starting point of each of the students. And then what I can do, one of those important pieces of student retention is creating relationships. And so when they're bringing content and things that interest them, that's sort of an avenue or a pipeline that I can use to navigate some relationship building with my students. And so it's been real successful. I've been successful doing that with my students because it's something they're interested in. A lot of times it's something I'm interested in. And so we have shared interests that can really kind of make those connections for us as a faculty and a student, which is an important piece of student retention. And then OER also has a great representation of diversity. And so students can go and find materials that are familiar to them, that represent their culture or ethnicity or background. And so OER really allows me to use content that those students bring in to create diversity in my classroom. And students find some of the most amazing things. I'm always impressed with what they find and bring. And so it's fun to watch them get excited about learning. And that's really what OER has done for me in my classrooms. And then OER really provides opportunities for teaching in multiple modalities. It's really important to address the different learning styles and different learning preferences that our students have. And so by having all of these open education materials available, there are videos, there are activities, there is reading. So you can really kind of shift and adjust the materials to the students that you have in your class. And one of the ways that I do that is I offer them a menu, a modality menu, if you will. And what I do is I offer a list of the content materials that are available for the chapter that we're working on. And then students have to choose from 2 or 3 of the different modalities. So some of them may choose to watch more videos than read more text. Some may go and choose to do activities or conduct some of their own primary research. And so it really allows students choice. And I think that's a huge retention factor that we can offer to our students by using OER in our classrooms, is what choices do they have and how can we empower them to make choices so that they feel successful and they're experiencing success in that classroom, both academically and professionally. Because I really want to teach my students to be successful outside of my classroom. And so a lot of these choices that I'm giving them and the empowerment that I'm giving them are skills and realities that they'll experience when they're not in the classroom. So OER has just done a great job, especially in my business content, of allowing me to create an environment where it really looks like what's going to happen in the real world. So I'm super excited about that. This is just sort of a helpful sheet. And if you're interested, I am happy to forward this to you. I believe it's also in or will be in the materials from the conference itself. But what this does in Creative Commons, where the open education resources are located, there are some different ways that that content is shared. And so certainly we always want to give credit to the original author. That's an important piece of what we do as educators and researchers. So we certainly always want to do that. But then you can add to, change, and sort of wiggle a little bit with some of these Creative Commons. And so then you've got to share alike, but you have to share that work that you've then created or added on to with that same license. So these are just some different licensing avenues that happen through Creative Commons that kind of tell you how the author wants their original work to be used. And so then you can kind of take a peek at these and get a feel for how those are used. Some of the challenges I've experienced with OER, when I first decided to do this, I was all excited. I was going to create this class. It was going to be a business communication class, and I was going to use OER so we didn't have any fees to the students for books. Oh my goodness. I didn't realize the time that I was going to have to put in. There is so much content out there, and really taking the time to ensure that I was reviewing and selecting quality work that would be intentional and very purposeful for what I was teaching took much, much longer than I had anticipated. So as a challenge to me, and if those of you who've used OER in your classrooms before, I think you may find that you have to plan about triple the time you think you need to go and find those materials when you're creating a class. And then in terms of permanency, this can be a challenge too, because if students want to use materials later, or if things continue to be added to and changed, sometimes you can have difficulty in finding what you originally presented to a class. And so sometimes there are some issues with permanency just because of the evolving and dynamic nature of the work that's being created. Quality. I've gotten a lot of pushback from some other faculty who are not quite as on board with open education resources as I am about, well, what about the quality? If it's free, it doesn't have to be paid for. Is there really quality content out there? And my answer to them is absolutely yes. But it will require that you as the educator and the instructor in that room take the time to make sure that that is quality materials and that it does fit with your teaching style and that it does fit with the rigor of what your expectations are in that classroom. So you're probably going to get pushback when you suggest OER to some faculty or administrators. And then one of the biggest things that I've had, one of the other presenters and I were talking about ancillaries and how I think one of her instructors, we would have been excited if we had some instructors who knew PowerPoint. And so trying to encourage them to go online and find materials that don't include PowerPoint slides that you can do the presentation and lecture from and don't include test banks can be very challenging. And so having to, again, create some of those materials or locate materials that you can use, kind of flow back upward into those timelines that take a bit more time to go ahead and create that content to make it a quality classroom for your students. So just some challenges that exist there. The benefits to OER are you are certainly lessening the financial burden on students. This is one of the greatest reasons that students don't stay with class or don't complete their programs. And so any way that we can find to lessen that financial burden, continue having the rigor in the classroom that we have with textbooks that are, for profit, and then allowing students to participate in creating that course content has been very, very successful in my rooms. So increasing student retention because of the empowerment that we can give our students to find materials, to talk about materials, to say, hey, that really doesn't make sense, and then really use them to sort of adjust the materials that are used in that class and say, okay, well, if you were the instructor, what would you do next semester? What would you take out? What would you put in? And so that really gets them engaged and involved in what's happening. With our students, electronic native familiarity is something that's very common to our students. They're very familiar with how electronic content works. And one of the benefits of OER is that most of the materials have a pretty easy carryover, whether it's a device that looks like a phone or whether it's a computer. And so I think that's been a nice feature for my students who are pretty much always on the move and have all of those outside things that are going on. They can pick up their phone while they're waiting for their kiddo to finish soccer practice, or while they're waiting at the car wash or whatever. The ease of using that in both a very transferable form has really made it nice for my students to be able to gain access.
Dr. Julie, sorry to break in. We're at about 9:16, so
okay.
We're about ready to transition over to Lauren. I'll give you a minute or so to wrap up, though.
Thank you. Perfect. So, and then it also provides opportunities for students to have those course materials. So this is just a resource list of all of the, well, not all, I should never say all. This is a resource list that has a list of open education resources. Some are specific to content. A great place to start is OpenStax. So I certainly appreciate your time this morning, and thank you. I hope you get excited and involved with OER as well.
Thank you very much, Dr. Julie. Up next, we have Lauren Grimes. Dr. Julie, if you could stop sharing, it'll allow Lauren to put her slides up if she's got any.
Okay. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, great. Well, good morning, everyone. I do have some slides I want to share. Just give me 1 second here. Okay, great. So my name is Lauren Grimes. I'm a professor based in Washington, D.C. I also do a bit of educational consultant work, and I've done a lot of online teaching within the past few years. My background is in political science, actually. I think I saw a couple of folks in the chat there discussing OER for poli-sci, and I just want to let you know that I totally agree. Seems like we are lagging behind a bit, so thanks for the previous presentation on OERs. But today's discussion that I'm bringing to us is on asynchronous education. It's a very interesting way to teach online courses, and especially in this current health crisis that we're in, I think a lot of folks are kind of delving into it and learning about asynchronous education along the way. I want to present some information on current trends and data, but really focus on sharing a couple of best practices that we can all use in the asynchronous learning environment. So here's a quick overview of what I have. I want us to discuss a working definition of asynchronous education, and then discuss 5 best practices that I have. Before we get started, if you all will indulge me a bit, I want to do a participant poll. So it will require you to use the internet and go to menti.com. I'm not sure if you all have used this survey tool before, but it's pretty interesting. If you could just go to menti.com and enter this code here. It's 957980, and answer this one question. What position do you hold within the education field? Are you an educator, an educational consultant? Do you serve in an administrator role, or is there another type of position you have? What makes this survey tool interesting is that you can see the results in real time. So thank you all for the folks who have responded so far, looks like the overwhelming majority here are educators. The number is growing. So educators, then we have folks in other positions, a couple of consultants and administrators. Great, great. Okay, so I was just curious about who's in the room. Like I said, I myself, I'm mostly in the as an educator, as an instructor, but I do serve in the consultant role as well. This information, regardless of the positions that you hold within the field, will still be very helpful to us. So when compared to synchronous education, asynchronous education is when you have a learning environment where you would generally see instructors provide information to students that they access in their own time. So it's not like a face-to-face, real-time interaction that occurs. It can be a slower pace depending on what the student wants, or a quicker pace depending on what the student wants. Typically, instructors provide deadlines for assignments, and the students just have to meet the deadlines in their own time. So the most recent data that the U.S. Department of Education has on post-secondary students shows that almost 34% of post-secondary students are engaging in some kind of online education. And of all of the post-secondary students that are taking online courses, about 47% of them are exclusively studying online. That is major compared to what education was just a few years ago. This is a trend that is increasing every academic year. And so we have to really be prepared for what that means for us as educators. When I visualize an asynchronous environment, I picture one where we have the students and instructors engaging in a very safe and healthy environment, and the same for student-to-student interaction as well. It can be quite a bit of a task, especially when you're first starting out, but it's definitely plausible and possible. So here's the second poll we have. If you can go to menti.com again and enter this second code, 582020, just have one more question for us. Have you ever taught an online asynchronous course before? And although I don't include menti.com as a best practice or a tip, feel free to adopt this for your online classes that you have. Students really like to complete the surveys and see what their peers are thinking and their thoughts on whether it's feedback for the class or just getting to know each other better. So this is really helpful. Okay, so the vast majority of the respondents so far have taught online and in an asynchronous environment. This is really, really good. Wonderful. And maybe for those of you who responded no, that you haven't yet, maybe you will in the future. Okay. So as with any learning environment, you'll have your pros and your cons. And so here I just wanted to discuss a few benefits and challenges that you will see, especially in the asynchronous environment. Many students are interested in online courses, especially those that are taught in this manner, because of the flexibility and convenience it allows. Students don't have to drive to take their classes at a university campus. They can take classes in between their work and personal life schedules. That's a big deal, especially when we're discussing work-life balance in adult learning environments. Some adult learners also decide that they want to accelerate their graduation. Maybe they want to graduate early. Taking these online classes really help to accomplish that because of the flexibility and convenience that is allowed. In terms of the challenges, what I have seen with my own students is that some have anxiety already about taking online courses, but even more so in an asynchronous environment because they're concerned about social anxieties that may happen. They feel a little isolated because they do not get to connect with their peers or with their instructors in a face-to-face real-time environment. That can be a challenge. It can be a difficult situation for certain students. In general, post-secondary education requires a lot of discipline, but when you're in the asynchronous environment and you really have to decide about a plan and a pace that you're going to work at in order to meet these deadlines that are pretty flexible, you have to have a lot of discipline. And lastly, the technological barriers that students tend to confront when they're learning online. Sometimes using these online survey tools and online school platforms, using the video and audio interactions is not always easy, and it takes some time to get used to. But if you're patient with your students, I learned they'll be patient with you, and everyone will get the hang of it eventually. And so I really feel as if you take certain steps, you can have a very healthy relationship with your students, and it won't really feel to them as if you all are hiding behind screens, that you're really working collaboratively together. So here's the first best practice I wanted to share: getting to know your students. Most professors that I meet already have some way that they do this, but here's some quick and easy, even quirky ways that you can do it. First simple way is to upload a photo of yourself. Very, very easy. Upload it as a profile picture on your course platform and have students do the same thing. Another way is to encourage students to upload video of themselves chatting. Now, we already discussed the technological challenges that some may face, so it shouldn't be, in my opinion, a mandatory thing, but you could allow it. Some students aren't all that comfortable with using actual video of themselves, and that's okay, which is why I wanted to share a resource that I think is quite fun. It's called a Powtoon. So I have an example of a Powtoon that I created for a course before, just for students who may have been looking for a different way to interact online.
Hello and welcome to Intro to Political Science. My name is Professor Grimes and I will be your instructor for this course. I'm really looking forward to guiding you as you learn more about the frameworks of political science.
Okay, so there was more to that, but I just wanted you to see a snippet of something that you can use in your classrooms to get your students to know more about you in an engaging way. So let's see. Best practice number 2, assessing comprehension. We generally do this if we offer essays or quizzes, tests to our students, but what I'm suggesting here is that from the very beginning of the course, you set a precedent and allow students to review information like their syllabus and instructions for assignments, rubrics. Allow them to review that information and to relay to you what they gathered from it and to assess if they have any kind of questions or need any kind of help better understanding what you expect from them. So some of my suggested resources for that would be Blackboard Collaborate. I have a lot of experience using that particular online learning platform, but a lot of schools are opening up the idea of the online teaching mechanisms to include platforms like Zoom or even WebEx. So with those platforms, you're interacting in real time, but the benefit of them are you can also record your sessions to post online for the other students who may not have been able to connect with you in real time so that they can review the information at their leisure. But this gives you an opportunity to see your students face to face. They can ask you questions, you can chat with them. So we're already on Zoom now, and you see how flawlessly this can work. You can do it with your students as well. If your university allows it. If not, then just stick with whatever platform they have available to you, which will be something most likely like a Blackboard. So best practice number 3, incorporate social and emotional learning techniques. We're all familiar with SELs, I'm sure, but I've been trying to think over the years, what are ways that I can really connect with my students on a personal level and create safe spaces for them online where we can interact and they can really share their feelings or any concerns that they're having. So 2 simple ways to do that would be to use a private journal assignment or opportunity and to do chat check-ins with them. So some examples of how you can do that is you can let students know, hey, if you ever want to connect with me and share any concerns that you're having, sign up for my office hours and we can do a chat check-in, or you can offer to do chat check-ins before grades are submitted on a quarterly basis. Then you can also offer opportunities for students to engage with you in a different way, and I'll show you an example of that as well. So,
Lauren,
yeah.
Sorry to interrupt. It's a great presentation, but we're kind of coming up
Okay.
for our next speaker. So if you have an opportunity to kind of wrap it up here in the next minute or so, that would be great.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so
Thank you.
I'll quickly just go to the last few slides, and they're pretty self-explanatory. But here is encouraging students to interact with each other. So not only in this healthy online environment are you interacting with your students one-on-one, but you want your students to interact as well. You can do that easily with a discussion board or a peer review assignment. That's an example of a discussion board, and this is an example of a peer assessment that appears on as a Blackboard feature. And the last would be student surveys. The universities already expect students to complete surveys, generally speaking, but I think it'd be good for all of us to consider creating our own surveys as well to allow students the opportunity to give their feedback and to show them that you value their opinions. So, very last slide I'll share. It's a quote that really empowers me. It says, "No significant learning can occur without significant relationship." So keep this in mind as you interact with your students online. Relationships first, and learning will also follow. Thank you.
Lauren, thank you very much for the presentation. Our next speaker is Nina. And Lauren, if you could do an unshare so that Nina can do share if she needs to. And give Nina a minute or so to get organized there, and then we'll be off and running with Nina's presentation. And just a message to the participants, we hope to have some time to ask questions at the end, but if you want to post any questions in the chat room, that would be great. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yep, all good, Nina.
Excellent. Thank you. So my name is Nina Ellis Frischmann, and I am an instructor at the Colorado Community College System, as well as the University of Colorado at Colorado Springs. I'm a PhD candidate, and I'm writing my dissertation on ways to build community to kind of battle the social isolation that Lauren Grimes just spoke about. And one of the ways that I'm doing that is using Perusall. And this is really collaborative reading. So looking at ways to increase not just in student content interactions, but student-student interactions, as well as student-instructor interactions. And so the first thing that I tell my students is that by engaging in collaborative reading, they're really becoming part of the manuscript tradition that dates back to the ancient world. In the ancient medieval worlds, the only way to share manuscripts was to continue to copy them every generation or so. What I think is interesting is that at some point in that copying tradition, the copyist decided to make a note. Maybe make a note that the translation wasn't right. Maybe there were some words missing. Maybe it was just something that the copyist said, you know, we have a better understanding of this now. And so they started writing in the margin. We call this marginalia. I'm a historian. What's interesting is the person after that initial copyist didn't just copy the manuscript, but copied the marginalia. And so what we have are discussions from copyists and scholars that continue over centuries and millennia. And so I tell students that reading should always be a conversation. That reading begins when the author of the text invites the reader to be part of that conversation, and that the reader has a voice, and that their voice matters. And the way that they can really engage in that conversation is to do marginalia. I tell them that when I was an undergraduate, I only purchased used books because I wanted to see the marginalia of students before me. 2, I tell students that reading is really about problem solving, right? We know through scholarship that when you begin to read with a purpose in mind, that it actually strengthens your comprehension. And it reminds students that when you reframe reading as problem solving, when you go in and you start to define the problem. So this is a brainstorm. I tell them flip through the pages, see what the headers look like, see if there are any pictures or diagrams, and think about what that chapter might be. And on the top of the chapter or the reading that you're doing, just to write what that brainstorm was. You're defining the problem. Now, it doesn't matter whether or not their brainstorm is correct. The very fact that they've done it actually primes the brain to start looking for the answers to those questions, right? And that as you read, you're looking for those answers. In effect, you're brainstorming solutions. That when you realize, oh, I was really off here, that you're picking a solution, right? And that you're implementing that for the rest of your reading. So you think, oh, so my first brainstorm was wrong. This is the correct one. And then you're looking to see what support the author uses to really convince me that that point they made was correct. So you're implementing a solution, and that you review the results at the end, right? That they should be annotating what their ideas were and what the author was and how they thought about it, because again, their voice matters. We all know as educators that reading is recursive, right? Learning is recursive, that you learn something. You have to be intentional and do something with that knowledge in order to contextualize it and to be able to use it in the next thing that you learn. So if students are not doing the reading, and that's actually what drew me to this, I realized in history we had a writing problem, that students have a very difficult time analyzing historical texts, analyzing secondary sources. And with reading being so text heavy, right, that it was really important. But then after a few years, I started surveying my students and realizing they don't read. They don't read for pleasure for the most part. They don't read for comprehension, that a lot of times they're physically going through the motion of reading, but they're not comprehending. And so they read it again and again and again, and it still doesn't make sense. And so a lot of times students would start the reading but wouldn't finish it. So they wouldn't get the whole article or the whole argument that I wanted them to understand. And so I started thinking back about that marginalia, about having conversations with other scholars. And so I wanted them to begin to read together and to remember that when they read together, right, they actually master the material faster and better, right? That it allows us to foster collaborative and thoughtful engagement, right? Because not only are they making their own annotations, they're reading other students' annotations, right? I wanted to provide for them a forum so that they could share questions, that they could say, I'm confused, and it be okay, or just to share their knowledge with others. And that allowed them to connect by addressing each other's questions and confusions. I started this when I was still teaching face-to-face. My teaching now is largely online. And so I began to look for a tool that would help me do this online. And I found a few, but my favorite really is Perusall. Perusall is my favorite option because I can provide personalized guidance. So I can group them together in smaller groups. I can provide them one-on-one feedback, or I can provide the entire class with feedback. So it allowed me to reach students where they were. It completely integrates with both Canvas and D2L. These are the two learning management systems that I use at my institutions. When I say it's completely integrated, I mean that students can actually access Perusall as if it were part of the learning management system, and I can actually import grades directly from Perusall into both Canvas and D2L. 3, it gives me data analytics. So I can see how long students are spending on the article. I can see how many times they've responded. I can see when they're confused, right? So it's a very powerful data gathering tool. 4, it works just like a discussion board. So as students are reading the article, they can highlight just as if it were a physical manuscript. And then after they highlight, a chat box comes up and they type their annotation or their question. And then they can see all of the other students' annotations, and it's threaded. So it's very easy. If they see something they want to comment on, they just hit click reply, just as if it were another discussion board. 5, I get a confusion report. So every time someone asks a question, another student can come by and say, you know what, I have the same question. Click a little question box button, and I get a report that says 15 people in class liked this question. So I know it's something I need to address with everyone. And lastly, there are a lot of different kinds of media I can use in Perusall. I can use a PDF, a website, any Office document, any e-book. More and more textbooks are partnering with Perusall. So it's really powerful. And when I'm making annotations, I can also embed websites. So if I want to link out to something else within the environment, I can do that. So this is what the dashboard looks like for one of my last classes. You can see when I log into Perusall, from here it's directly connected with my my Canvas course. So you see that it has the semester and it has my class and all the documents. I uploaded the documents. I made assignments out of them. I can see here for my course Campbell that 68% completed this with the maximum score. 25% were still in progress. I had 175 comments, 23 questions, and 8 unanswered questions. I can click on that unanswered question and go and answer them right now. And this is also where I can gain my analytics and my confusion reports. This is actually what it looks like when we're in it. So you see that everything that is highlighted is a place where a student has made an annotation. And then off here to the right, I get everything that's here. If something's in bold, it means I haven't read it yet. You see the little question mark in the orange bubble. This tells me it was a question that somebody had. It tells me whether or not I have answered it. It tells me how many responses are in every annotation. So it gives me a lot of information. And what I like about this is that it is accessible for people with disabilities who use a screen reader. Perusall has a screen reader based right in it. So it's easy for people. It's here on the very bottom. They click it and Perusall will read not just the article, but the annotations and responses as well. And then this is what the gradebook looks like. You notice that Perusall will give students a grade between 0 and 3 based on things that you have chosen. So here I chose that students should make 5 annotations of their own and that they should respond to at least 3 annotations of other students. So what it does is it comes up with that grade based on the number of annotations that students made, how many were submitted on time, whether or not their annotation demonstrated thorough and thoughtful, insightful interpretation, whether it was superficial, or whether it demonstrates no thoughtful reading or interpretation at all. The distribution of annotations, whether or not they did everything all at once, or whether they were evenly distributed throughout the assignment period, whether or not their annotation quality met the parameters I put in, and then again, what that assignment score is. And again, once this imports into my gradebook in my learning management system, I can put this up or down based on my own notes of what the student did. So of course I can overwrite it, but it gives me a really good starting point with students in guiding them in their reading. Maybe their reading was mostly superficial. I can give them examples of how they can go from being a superficial reader to being a thoughtful contributor. So it provides me a lot of ability to really guide students through their reading. Since I have implemented this, generally the first assignment is a little rough for students because I have them reading peer-reviewed articles. So these are pretty high-level reading, particularly for my beginning community college students. But by the time that we are finished with the semester, students are reading at or above the reading comprehension level of my university students. So it really has helped me frame reading. And I tell students, if you have a question, ask it and move on. If there's a word or an event or a person that you don't understand, I want you to stop. I want you to get on Google. I want you to look it up and then come back and define that word or do a link to the encyclopedia about that event or that person so that the rest of their peers can really help. And they really see it as their responsibility to do that. So it has helped me. Yes.
And I apologize for breaking in. We've only got about a minute left and we've got a hard stop there. So I just wanted to give you a little bit of time to finish up. And if anybody has questions, please put them in the chat and we'll try and get those answered for you.
Sure. I just wanted to wrap up and say that it has helped me build community and it has helped the reading and writing for my students. These are my works cited, which are fantastic. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Nina. Sorry for the hard stop here, but that's the nature of virtual conferences sometimes. So I want to extend my appreciation to Dr. Julie and Lauren and Nina. I know it's a little difficult sometimes to do a group presentation, and the three of you handled it very well. So thanks for sharing your information, your application of that information with the participants today. And unfortunately, we are at the end of our allotted time. So Julie, Lauren, and Nina, I will try to compile some questions and get those to you. Perhaps we can answer them in a different way than what we normally do. So thank you again for joining us here at the eLearning Consortium Conference virtually, and thanks for your presentations. And I hope you are able to participate as a participant in other sessions as we go forward. So thanks to everyone.
Thanks, Greg. And just a reminder, fill out a session feedback form. That is incredibly important for our presenters and for our conference. So please take the time. You can find the link. It's in chat, also at the top of the schedule document. So please fill it out for every session you go to.
Thank
Thanks,
you all
everybody.
very much.
Thanks, everyone.